You're listening to the Business Mike podcast. Amazing interviews with entrepreneurs and industry thought leaders.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Business Mike podcast. And joining us today is Justine. Justine, can you tell the listeners and viewers a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Great. Well, first of all, Dolly, thank you so much for hosting me. I'm excited to be on your podcast and welcome to all the listeners. So I am a marketing, brand and customer experience strategist. I work kind of in four core principles: know your world, so competitor and market research; know your customer insight; know your advantage. So I work a lot on brand strategy. And then also know your journey. So go to market, key account market strategies. And then I also act, so I can provide strategies to organizations for internal teams to run with, but I also act as a fractional CMO where required. So not only provide the strategies, but actually implement them as well. Predominantly B2B. So just so you know, my answers today are going to be very much focused more on the world of B2B.
Yes, and that's exactly why I had you on the show. And I'm curious as to how you found yourself here.
So we started a small company, a while ago now. It's been a long journey. A data and analytics company, Microsoft and SAP partners. And we started very small. And being owners of a small company, I had to put on all the hats. HR, finance, customer service, managing the customer service, managing education, sales, training, you name it. So I had a lot of exposure to different roles in an organization, which has been very helpful to me later on as a strategist. So I've been in the world of IT, and we obviously grew, and then people, we got people to take on specific roles. We then merged with another organization to form a much larger IT company. And then 2017, I decided, no, I'm quite keen on actually getting out and dealing with customers and being a consultant. And then for my sins, I decided to do my master's in management strategic marketing through Wits Business School, run a consultancy and look after my kids. So challenging time. But it's been a great 7 years as a consultant. I've worked with wonderful agents, fantastic customers, and it's been a great journey. And I'm very passionate about helping organizations understand where they are, where they need to be, and really kind of help them along that journey.
All right, and I have a list of questions for you here because I'm very fascinated as to how customer experience and the brand of a business overlap. And to kick us off, I just wanted to find out from you if there are any steps that you take to help your clients truly understand what their customers and employees think about their brand and whether there are common insights that are overlooked by businesses.
I have a very specific approach that I use with my clients. It's kind of a very unique niche way of approaching it. So I've got both a quantitative and qualitative approach. So from a qualitative approach, I actually specifically interview senior leadership of my clients' clients and really kind of deep dive into customer experience and brand perception. There is rating built in, so NPS, CSAT scores, etc., word association. But typically I do a very, very deep dive and then, amalgamate all my responses and give a detailed report. From a kind of data side, I do quantitative analysis. Obviously, some of my customers have got, hundreds of customers. It's impossible for me to get to all of them. So I then will use online tools, do surveys, that type of thing. There may be some free-form text, but generally it's then a lot more kind of ratings driven. So that's kind of my approach. And then employees, obviously, I prefer to speak to people, but again, for larger ones, I will also get their kind of experience across the board. It's interesting from a kind of insight perspective. Definitely across the board, there is almost always a perception gap between experience and expectation. So I see that across the board. And that's kind of quite a common thing. There is also frequently a value perception. So the actual financial cost of what was delivered versus the perceived value of what was received. So that closing that gap is often very, very important. And then an insight I definitely see in B2B brands. So not from a customer perspective, this is more from my customer perspective, is not really embedding marketing in the organization. Marketing is sort of seen as a side function that is used to generate leads, instead of people actually truly understanding the function of marketing and the role that it plays in an organization. So, I mean, that's a key sort of thing that I see is the lack of understanding of the role of marketing. So that's part of what I do is try and do education, etc. And then lastly, I think a common insight is the value of visual identity and visual representation. So, for example, when I'm explaining, concepts to clients using things like word clouds to sort of show them the value of looking at things in a certain way. So whether it's positive or negative word associations. So that's just some of the common things. I mean, typically when I'm dealing with a client, I'm very specific in their feedback, like exactly down to fine detail, areas of concern, areas that can be built on, where things are good and can be promoted in the organization.
Yeah. Are you able to share some of the reasons as to why this gap exists? Because like you rightly said, the business might have a perception of the way they perceive their brand, and on the customer side, it's something completely different. And so when you come in, of course, you help them reconcile those differences. But then when it comes to sharing them, like you rightly said, putting this data together, the one that you've collected, how then do you proceed to help them come up with actionable marketing strategies that can help them reconcile those differences between the two parties?
Okay, so firstly, yes, I mean, that's often, when I give my feedback to the board, that's often when I'm quite unpopular. I always joke with my clients when I'm with them, and I'm like, don't throw stones at me. I'm, the bearer sometimes of bad news. But typically, I think clients are invested in improving. They know that there may be an issue. So I think the source of that gap is often complacency. In the world of B2B, especially say you're delivering a product or a service, you might well be as a vendor or as a supplier, you're kind of doing your stuff from day to day. You're not necessarily really looking at what's actually happening. And that can sometimes be due to using the wrong metrics for measurement. So it's all very well to use financial, and it's critical to look at things like revenue, profit margins, that type of thing. But, if you're not also looking at customer attrition, rate of customer attrition, acquisition strategies, are they actually returning what needs to be done? That's often kind of where the gap comes in. Also, because customers don't have feedback loops, so they may have sort of things in place, but a feedback loop is not necessarily closed. So that's where the gap may come in. That's absolutely critical to have a closed feedback loop. I think sometimes lack of senior involvement. Sometimes the bigger organizations, rightly so, maybe get too involved in the day-to-day running of operations, and they might lose that connection to customers. So that's, I think, kind of quite a critical thing, is talking to customers. Biggest one for me, obviously, with my background, is a lack of understanding of the importance of brand and reputation. So Warren Buffett's quote, he says, it takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to destroy it. And if you understand that, you'll do things differently. And that's part of, kind of where I go in the process with my customers, is that education and the importance of building relevant, strong brands within an organization. And it's quite a difficult step, because sometimes often, in fact, it's more about lead generation, demand generation, rather than understanding the importance of an always on brand sort of activities. So that's sort of some of the gaps, I guess. It's culture sometimes plays a part. So sometimes it depends. I've worked with clients in the States, in the Middle East, Australia, South Africa, and often there may be, in some cultures, there is the ability to talk straight and absolutely communicate. Sometimes, I think in South Africa, we're quite guilty of this. It's like you don't want to hurt feelings, so you kind of backpedal or soften feedback to your vendor, where actually sometimes it just needs straight talking. And then the last thing is of course, not actually setting expectations properly up front. So communication plays a strong part in that. I think, if you're looking at, how do you transform these insights into the sort of actionable market plans or marketing strategies? This is absolutely critical. So once you have the data, once you've kind of gone through that process of gathering the insights, it's really understanding where the gaps lie. So what are the customer pain points? What are the opportunities? What are their needs? And really kind of understanding that. So once you've understood that and analyzed your data, I think a step that sometimes strategists ignore, and which I think is very important, is you've got to then align activities with business goals. So marketing strategy should never live in isolation. They are actually just part of an overall business strategy. They've got to feed a business strategy, and ultimately that's kind of where you've got to put your action. So if, the insight may be that you want to grow the business goal is that you want to grow your customer base. It's then identifying that need. How are you going to address it in the wider market? Building your compelling message, crafting your targeted kind of strategies. So this is obviously a much bigger part of your kind of market activities. Is who is your customer? What are their pain points? Where are they? How do you reach them? What messaging will be relevant? How do they get hold of you? What is the feedback loop? And then, obviously then the good old data, making sure that you're monitoring and measuring relevant KPIs. And I think this is just something I want to quickly talk about is the relevance of KPIs in marketing. They're absolutely critical. They should be monitored, at a board level, highly important. But it's measuring the right metrics. So in B2B, attribution modeling and attribution metrics can be quite challenging because the path to sales or path to purchase, we call it the dark funnel. So it's multiple touch points along the way. There's many parties involved. It's not that you're speaking to a single person. So when you're crafting those market activities, you really need to be thinking on your toes. It's not just one message to one person. It's a message possibly to multiple people along the value chain.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And the question that comes to mind for me in particular, just like you've said, when you are doing this marketing to your clientele, I'm looking at a scenario where you're trying to be authentic. So crafting a message that is going to various customer segments in a way that doesn't compromise on the customer experience or the perception of experience. How do brands do that? Because I feel sometimes that's where they go wrong. Sometimes the branding and communication is done with broad strokes and not necessarily personalized for the various customer segments. And this, in the long run, leads to challenges when it comes to the experience of the customers. So how easy is it to do that, especially for businesses that have very, very many customers and customer segments?
So typically in the role of B2B, I don't necessarily look at customer segments with the same lens. So firmographics are obviously important, size of a company, industry, that type of thing. But a useful tool that I use is Tony Ulwick's Jobs to be Done framework. So it's really about understanding what is the person trying to achieve, what is the job that needs to be done. And there's different aspects to that. There's the functional aspect, and then there's emotional aspect. Once you really truly understand what the customer is trying to achieve, only then do you craft a core message. And that core message is absolutely critical. So, I mean, I love that idea of authenticity, because it's all very well crafting a message that doesn't resonate. And you can't craft a message unless you really understand your target audience. So understanding that target audience and what they want to achieve is critical. And I think then you can, so there's a core message, but then you can tailor it for your specific audiences. So industry, for example, role-based, whether it's a CIO, CFO, that type of thing, it's not the same messaging. I think, you've got to make sure that your messaging resonates in the right way with the different roles. And then I think just having the clarity and consistency in your messaging. So consistency, you'll hear me talk about a lot. It's absolutely key, especially from an authenticity perspective. So making sure that you have the same brand voice and the same tone and maybe different messages, but you're representing the brand across all your kind of different initiatives and different platforms and different experiences, that it is a consistent experience that really leads to kind of trust and enhanced reputation. And I think act with intention. So I'm reading a book at the moment called Unreasonable Hospitality. It's quite interesting. It's based on the restaurant industry, but there's a lot there that I've kind of picked up. So when you act with intention, it's actually doing what you say you're going to do. And that is the whole point of authentic brands. You can't come with a message to the wrong target audience and expect it to be perceived authentically. You've got to be able to deliver on what your messaging is and make sure that you can actually, really build that trust and positive experiences with a customer. So that, to me, looking at the different touch points, looking at your different target audiences, what are they trying to achieve? Build a compelling message, tailor it to the right kind of audience, and then make sure that you can deliver on your promises. It's kind of as simple as that. Inauthentic brands are those that don't live by their brand essence.
Yeah, and I'm curious as to what role the employees of an organization play in all this. How important is it for them to understand the brand of the organization that they're representing and embody its values? What role do they have to play in all this to help a business move forward?
It's so critical, Dad. It's so critical. So, I mean, this is a particular actual thing for me because my dissertation was on authenticity and reputation of B2B employer brands. So it's something I'm quite passionate about. Your employees are the face of your company. They are the ones who are delivering the brand message. So it's absolutely beyond critical that they are representing the brand in the right way. So a positive customer experience is often promoted by somebody who is delivering a brand promise, absolutely buys into that concept of customer service and what it means to really deliver on expectations. Whereas, if somebody is not an employee, has a maybe they're disassociated from the brand, they're more likely to present a kind of negative or give a negative experience, and it can be very impactful. That saying that one bad apple spoils a barrel. You can do an enormous amount of work and still have people actually undermine the messaging. So the important thing though is that you've got to train people. You've got to train your employees. They need to buy into the brand. I'm not talking about a one-off session like, where we've got a new brand. I'm talking about consistently throughout the year presenting the brand in a different way. Help them, empower them, help them grow, really align, what the expectations are in terms of how they deliver. That to me is it's just beyond crucial. But it's also about being realistic. It's very difficult in some organizations. People are living, with low salaries, and they need to put bread on the table. How much are they really going to care about delivering great customer experience? And that then for me comes from, leadership. You've got to have strong leadership who live the brand themselves. It's not about saying, do what I say. It's about do as I do. So these strong leadership who can actually empower people, bring them up in the organization, train, really care for their people. So brand it's kind of all encompassing in an organization. It's not just saying, oh, here's our brand promise, off you go, deliver it. It's really about looking after your people. And then they're much more likely to actually communicate and want to deliver that exceptional service.
Right. Thank you for that, Justine. And as we wind up this particular conversation, I wanted to know from you, what do you think are the top elements of any marketing initiative that would leave a long-lasting impact?
Okay, so marketing elements. So I'm going to derail that slightly in that in the world of B2B, I talked about that dark funnel. So it's very seldom just one kind of marketing activity or marketing element. So when I talk to my customers, I really build a detailed customer journey map with them. So from awareness, consideration, purchase, experience, retention. Who are the people in that journey? Who are the customers in that journey? What do they need to achieve? What are the messages that we're kind of getting to them? Really making sure it's authentic, consistent. It's sort of the right thing, that it's a powerful experience. So no matter where they are in their journey, and no matter what their role is, they're achieving a consistent, excellent sort of experience. Probably, to be a bit more specific about a marketing element for me, it's things like customer stories, customer influencers, the being able to provide positive customer stories, case studies, that type of thing really underlines people's choice for choosing a particular brand. So that kind of positive interaction. So for me, from a B2B perspective, that's almost a no-brainer, that you've got to have that sort of key kind of customer credibility, that ability to provide that credibility, that someone else has used your services before and is happy and can actually vouch for them. That's probably one of the most powerful things in B2B.
Right. And as we conclude the episode, what parting words would you like to share with anyone listening that is involved in building a brand, in marketing, in customer experience, or whether they own a business? If you could give them a takeaway from today's discussion, what would that be? Great question,
Dario. I'm so glad you asked that. Speak to your customers. I just often don't see that enough, that there's kind of, there's a product or service developed without actually having spoken to customers first. So it's not just about the sales. Go to your customers, speak to them, understand where they want to be, really understand the person and the business and their goals, and then work towards providing your product, your service, your messaging, whether you're a business owner or a marketing. I cannot underemphasize enough. I can't emphasize enough the critical importance of talking to your customers.
All right, Justine. And for anyone that has listened to this and they would like to get in touch with you, maybe there are a few questions that they have based on our conversation today, how can they find you on the internet, our LinkedIn, website, anything? How can we get in touch with you?
So I am on LinkedIn, Justine Morgan, but otherwise, great, drop me an email, justine@cxignite.co.za. More than happy to chat to people.
Right. Well, thank you once again, Justine. This particular episode has quite a lot of conversations. There's so many strings we could have pulled on, and I'm sure down the line I'll have you on back again just so we can explore this conversation further. But for today, thank you so much, Justine. We really appreciate having you on the show.
Wonderful. It's been wonderful to be on. Thank you so much, Dowdy. You're a great host. Thank you.